To unlearn what dysfunction taught me about love, loyalty, and worth, I had to look deeply at myself and question the roles I was forced to play.
You've always felt it, haven't you? That strange weight in the air the moment you walk into the room during family activities. The feeling that you're somehow different, not better, but separate, not quite belonging. Maybe they see it in your eyes, maybe it's in your voice, or in the way you ask questions no one else dares to ask. Maybe you learned early on that silence was safer, and yet, even in that chaos, something in you stayed awake. It's not about family trauma. This is what few are brave enough to speak about, that sometimes the most gifted souls, the so-called chosen ones, are not born into peace, but into fire, into dysfunction, into homes that seem allergic to light. And here's the part that might shake you. This wasn't punishment. This was precision. You were planted there, not randomly, but with intention. In many Eastern philosophies, the soul is seen as something that doesn't just reincarnate to have fun or play games of fate. It comes to grow, to purify, to serve. In certain Tibetan Buddhist teachings, it's said that highly evolved souls actually choose challenging families not in spite of their dysfunction, but because of it. Why? Because the soul knows something the mind forgets. Fire tempers the blade. Darkness teaches you how to become the light. Look at the life of Siddhartha Gautama, the man who would later be known as the Buddha. He was born into royalty, but his palace was not a blessing. It was a cage of illusion. He wasn't allowed to see suffering, death, sickness, or anything that could disrupt his comfort, and yet when he finally did step beyond the walls of that protected life, it shattered him. But that shattering became his awakening. The cracks let the truth in. For many chosen ones, those cracks appear much earlier, not in adulthood, but in childhood, through a parent who couldn't love, through siblings who competed instead of connected, through betrayal, neglect, manipulation. You begin to wonder if love is real. You question your own worth, and that's where the soul whispers, keep going. There's something you must remember. Because here's what no one tells you when you're growing up in a toxic family. You're not there to become them. You're there to transcend them. But not with hatred, not with revenge, with clarity, with healing, with purpose. And it's not just for you. One of the most hidden truths about spiritual awakening is that it often begins inside the lineage that hurt you most. You were born into that bloodline because someone had to stop the pattern. Someone had to say, this ends with me, and not just say it, but live it. Some people spend their whole lives trying to feel chosen, but those who truly are, they were born into situations that tried to erase them. That's how the soul proves its strength, not through comfort, but through resistance, through remembering who you are even when everyone else has forgotten. In African spiritual traditions, especially among the Yoruba, it's believed that before birth, the soul stands before the Orishas, the divine forces, and agrees to the conditions of this life. The soul says, give me what I need to grow, not what feels easy, not what looks good from the outside, but what will wake me up, what will test me, what will shape me into what I came here to be. If you grew up in a home that silenced you, that wounded you, that made you question your very existence, please understand, your soul knew, your soul chose. Because deep inside, it remembered the truth. The strongest light is born in the darkest cave. The purest healers walk through their own fires first. And the chosen ones, they are born exactly where they are needed most. And maybe that's you. Not just the survivor of a toxic family cess, but the transformer of it. You are the interruption, the sacred disruption, the soul with the courage to alchemize pain into wisdom. And even now, as you read this, maybe something inside you is stirring. Not anger, not blame, but a knowing, a remembering, that all along you were not broken by your past, you were being forged. Not every chosen one is born into peace. In fact, most are not. If your family life felt like a battlefield more than a sanctuary, you are not alone, and you are not broken. The world's great mystics, saints and visionaries did not come from perfect homes. They came from pressure, pain, contradiction, from families that misunderstood them, silenced them, tried to mold them into something they were never meant to be. And still, they rose. A conflicted household gives birth to fire. St. Augustine is remembered as one of the greatest voices in Christian history. His writings shaped theology for centuries, but few talk about where his spiritual fire began, inside a deeply conflicted household. His father was dismissive, his mother fervently religious, and the young Augustine found himself pulled between rebellion and longing. He sought escape in worldly pleasure, lost himself in addiction and despair. Yet beneath it all was a soul that remembered. It wasn't the absence of love that shaped him, it was the pain of it being misdirected. Augustine's transformation didn't begin in light, but in longing. The deeper the ache, the stronger the call. The same is true for Teresa of Avila, who was born into Spanish nobility. Her family was traditional, rigid, and uncomfortable with her inner fire. Her early years were marked by guilt, religious pressure, and a longing to break free from a world obsessed with control. But instead of folding under the weight of her family's expectations, Teresa turned inward. Her mystical visions, so full of beauty and fire, came through years of inner struggle. She once said that prayer is nothing but friendly conversation with the one who loves us. But what she didn't always say was that this intimacy was forged in isolation. It was her rejection by the outer world that made her reach so deeply within. Buddha too knew the pain of a toxic kind of love. Siddhartha Gautama was raised in a palace, his father determined to protect him from suffering. But this protection became a prison. He wasn't allowed to see illness, aging, or death. He wasn't allowed to see life. And so, when he finally did, everything changed. He walked away from everything, family, wealth, title, because his soul had seen through the illusion. He wasn't running from his family. He was answering something his lineage couldn't name, and from that journey, the Eightfold Path was born. From the suffocation of control came the liberation of awakening. Chosen souls walk through hardship. Even in more modern times, chosen souls have had to walk through family hardship. Leo Tolstoy, the author of War and Peace, grew up surrounded by status and expectation. But the deeper he went into that life, the more hollow it felt. His family wanted titles, land, appearances, but his soul wanted truth. And when that truth finally broke through a spiritual crisis that shook his entire world, he abandoned comfort, embraced simplicity, and became a spiritual mentor to visionaries like Gandhi. What he inherited by blood, he rejected by spirit. And in that rejection, he found purpose. It's not always trauma that breaks us open. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's the weight of expectations we never agreed to carry. Francis Xavier was raised with privilege, destined to rise through the church's political ranks. But his soul wasn't here to play by those rules. Something in him longed for service, not status. He gave up a life of comfort to walk barefoot into foreign lands, to teach, to heal, to love. His family never understood, but the people he touched did. They saw what his birth family never could, the radiance of someone who chose the sacred path over the safe one. Rumi too knew this path. As a young man, he followed in the footsteps of his father, a respected scholar. But his soul was hungry for more than doctrine. When he met Shams of Tabriz, everything changed. His family rejected the mystic. His community turned on him. But Rumi didn't turn back. When Shams disappeared, possibly killed by those closest to Rumi, he fell into a grief so deep it shattered every belief he'd held. And from that grief, poetry poured out, verse after verse of longing, union, and divine love. Rumi's greatest wisdom was born not from peace, but from heartbreak. His family couldn't understand his soul's devotion, and so he walked alone and found God in the emptiness. Each of these stories reveals a sacred pattern. Chosen ones often come through families that cannot recognize them. Their souls are too bright, too different, too unshakable, and because of that, they are tested early. Their hearts are broken in places most never touch. But this is not punishment, it is preparation. The wound becomes the gateway, the rejection becomes the redirection, the pain becomes the path. If you are reading this, and you felt like the black sheep of your family, if your childhood was marked by confusion, neglect, emotional violence, or even just the quiet ache of never being fully seen, you are not cursed. You are being refined. The universe places light in dark places not to bury it, but to test how deeply it can shine. And when a soul chooses to shine anyway, it changes everything. You're not alone in this. Others have walked it before you. They cried the same tears, asked the same questions, doubted the same call, but they kept going. And now it's your turn. The world does not need more people shaped by comfort. It needs those who were shaped by fire and still chose love. Not everyone survives a toxic family, but the ones who do often carry within them the medicine the world needs most. Your story may have started in struggle, but it was always pointing towards something greater, and that greatness, it's not coming, it's already in you. Hurting with silence. Some families don't hurt you with fists or shouts. They hurt you with silence, with guilt, with that long, disappointed sigh. They hurt you by shaping a version of you that never felt fully allowed to exist. And when you're born into a toxic family as a chosen one, the attacks are rarely obvious. They're psychological, subtle, spiritual. It starts with guilt, one of the most powerful tools toxic family systems use. Not the guilt that teaches right from wrong, but the kind that twists your light into a burden. They say things like, "After all we've done for you," or "You've changed," or "Why can't you just be normal?" Not because you've done something wrong, but because your growth exposes their stagnation. Your clarity threatens their illusion. Your light, even unspoken, reveals the shadows they don't want to face. This isn't accidental. This is part of an old spiritual pattern. In ancient Gnostic teachings, there's a concept called the archons, forces that manipulate perception and keep souls asleep to their true power. These aren't literal demons, but patterns of distortion. And in many families, these patterns live in the roles people are forced to play: the scapegoat, the golden child, the lost one, the caretaker. These roles aren't chosen by the soul, they're assigned by fear, by generational pain, by emotional debt. And here's where it gets even deeper. Toxic families often try to make you feel like you are the problem for seeing the truth. They twist your intuition into disobedience. Your boundaries become selfishness. Your calling becomes rebellion. Why? Because chosen ones are wired to awaken first, to notice what others are too afraid to name. And in families ruled by unspoken contracts and emotional silence, noticing becomes a threat. But what they don't realize is that guilt only works on those who have empathy, and your empathy, your heart, is not your weakness. It's your entry point to ancient strength. In the Bhagavad Gita, the warrior Arjuna stands frozen before battle. He sees loved ones on the other side of the field and refuses to fight. But Krishna, the divine voice, tells him, "You are not killing the body, you are awakening the soul. Fight not out of anger, but out of duty to the light." This is your role now. You're not here to destroy your family, but to interrupt the cycle, to see the pattern, feel the pain, and still choose truth. And truth will not always feel good, especially not at first. You might feel guilty for setting boundaries, for not calling back, for saying no even when your voice shakes. You might mourn the closeness you never had. But hear this: you're not betraying your family by breaking free. You're betraying yourself by staying small to keep them comfortable. The ancient mystics knew this. In the desert teachings of early Christianity, the desert fathers and mothers left their communities, not to escape, but to cleanse their perception. They saw that real clarity often requires solitude, not as a rejection, but as a return to truth. So if your family uses guilt as a chain, recognize it for what it is, a test, one that every chosen one must face. You are not cold for walking away. You're not ungrateful for choosing peace. You're answering a deeper calling, one that says, your soul came here for more than survival. It came to realign a broken pattern with love. But love does not mean staying where your light is dimmed. Love sometimes means leaving. Leaving doesn't always look like a slammed door or a dramatic exit. Sometimes it looks like emotional detachment, like quietly cutting the cords of expectation, like no longer playing the role they wrote for you. This kind of detachment is sacred. It's not cruel. It's karmic. It gives your lineage the only real chance of healing, by showing it something new. So when they try to guilt you back into silence, back into the pattern, back into the mold, pause. Remember who you are. The chosen one isn't chosen for comfort. You are chosen to see what others refuse to see, and love anyway. But that love starts with you, and from that self-love, you will write a new story. Not one where you erase your past, but where you rise from it. Not one where you abandon your roots, but where you transmute them. Because the real alchemy of the Chosen One is this: you don't just break curses, you become the blessing that was always missing. Become the missing blessing. Rarely does a Chosen One admit the pain of trying out loud, of loving harder than most, of holding space for others even while bleeding quietly inside. Whether they know it or not, Chosen Ones move through life trying to become what they never had. They smile through pain, they forgive without apology, they show up for people who would never do the same in return. Not because they're naive, but because they remember, somewhere deep in their bones, what it feels like to live without light, to grow up in a world where the people around you were too wounded to see you clearly, and to still choose to bring light. That is not weakness. That is sacred resilience. The Chosen One often doesn't announce themselves, they don't wear a crown or stand on a stage. Instead, they become the quiet gravity in the lives of others, the friend who listens without judgment, the sibling who breaks the generational cycle, the stranger who says exactly what someone needed to hear in the middle of a dark day. Even in their silence, they carry medicine. But here's what most don't realize. This gift isn't always gentle. Light reveals, and revelation often brings discomfort. So sometimes, the very people the Chosen One tries to help will turn against them. Not because the Chosen One did something wrong, but because their presence made it harder for others to keep lying to themselves. Light can feel like a threat when you've lived in the dark for too long. Still, the Chosen One loves. They love from a distance. They love through the boundary. They love in the silence of letting go. They love not to fix others, but because that is what they are made of. Love is not their strategy, it's their nature. And the more they grow, the more they begin to realize this truth. You can't heal everyone, but you can become the healing that was missing. You can choose to no longer pass down the same pain. You can forgive without letting people back in. You can speak gently to yourself, even when no one else ever did. You can bless others, not with grand gestures, but with your wholeness. This is what the ancient mystics called barakah, a concept from Middle Eastern spiritual traditions. Barakah is a kind of sacred presence, a blessing that flows through someone who is in alignment with the divine. You can't fake it, you can't force it. It shows up in people who carry peace within them, no matter the chaos around them. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present, being real, being rooted in the heart. When you live with barakah, your life becomes a quiet ripple of healing, not because you're trying to change the world, but because you're no longer at war with yourself. Your smile becomes medicine, your stillness becomes safety, your journey becomes a map others didn't know they were searching for. And that's the shift. When you stop trying to be seen by the people who refuse to see you, and instead become the kind of presence you always needed, you stop living in reaction. You begin living in purpose. You become the missing blessing. And here's the mystery of it all. When you become that, the universe begins to move differently around you. People are drawn to you without knowing why. Opportunities align without you forcing them. Peace deepens in your body, and slowly you start to feel it, that you are no longer just the product of your past. You're now the author of your future. You might not have had a role model, you might not have had support, but you can become those things. And in doing so, you don't just heal your own story, you rewrite the story of everyone who crosses your path. Chosen ones don't walk an easy road, but they walk a holy one. And somewhere along the way they realize, the blessing I was looking for was never outside of me. It was waiting to be born through me. Every wound carries a lesson. The wounds you carry are not random. They weren't given to you as punishment or mistake. They are signposts, sacred markings on the map of your becoming. And while they may still ache when touched, while they may pulse with old memories, each one carries with it a hidden lesson, waiting to be uncovered by the eyes of your healing self. If you come from a toxic family, you already know this pain. It's the sting of being misunderstood when you're trying to love. It's the weight of silence in a room that should have been filled with warmth. It's the guilt that was handed to you like an heirloom, passed down not with malice, but through generations of unspoken suffering. And yet, despite it all, you are still here, searching for something deeper, something truer. You may ask yourself, why did I have to endure this? Why me? But instead of asking why it happened to you, what if you asked what it's trying to awaken in you? Because this is the truth many chosen ones eventually come to learn. The wound is not just a scar, it is a doorway. A crack through which light can enter. A moment where your soul begins to speak more loudly than your history. When you think back on the pain your family caused, there might be a flood of emotions, anger, sorrow, betrayal, even shame. But here's the deeper truth. These emotions are not the enemy. They are messengers. Each one is trying to show you something about who you are, what you need, and how you've been shaped by environments that never saw your full worth. Chosen ones are not just born into broken systems, they're born to end them. And that journey begins the moment you realize that the pain inflicted on you was never truly yours. It was inherited pain, their fear, their limitations, their unmet needs. Somewhere along the way, though, you took it on as your own. You internalized it. You built an identity around it. You wore their wounds like your reflection. But you are not their story. You are not their projection. You are not their unhealed past. You were born to write something new. And that means separating yourself from the patterns you were raised in, not with hate, not with vengeance, but with clarity. With the quiet, holy act of saying, "This ends with me." Still, healing doesn't come easily. Some wounds live so deep in the body they feel like part of your very DNA. Some beliefs were planted in your childhood and watered every day until they became your truth. You're not enough. You're too much. You're the problem. How do you unlearn that? How do you walk away from what you've carried for so long? It starts with awareness. Awareness that the way your family treated you is not a reflection of your worth. Awareness that just because they couldn't love you the way you needed doesn't mean you are unlovable. Awareness that your soul did not come here to repeat cycles. It came to transform them. But awareness is just the beginning. Real healing begins when you choose to take responsibility. Not for what happened to you, but for what happens next. And that means stopping the wait. Stopping the hope that they'll change, that they'll finally see you, that one day they'll say the words you've longed to hear. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I love you as you are." The heartbreaking truth is that some people never change. Some apologies never come. Some love is never offered. And yet, you can still be free. Because your freedom doesn't depend on their transformation. It depends on yours. You heal not by waiting for them to become different, but by becoming different yourself. By giving yourself what they could not. Love, safety, truth, wholeness. So ask yourself, what would it feel like to release the resentment? Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. What would it look like to let go of the bitterness? Not because you've forgotten, but because carrying it is too heavy a cost. Forgiveness doesn't mean you condone their behavior. It means you will no longer let it define you. It means you no longer give their actions permission to live inside your body, poisoning your joy, stealing your sleep, tightening your chest. It means you reclaim the space inside of you and fill it with something better, your own light. In this sacred act of release, something shifts. The pain no longer imprisons you. It becomes your teacher. The wound that once silenced you begins to speak. And what it says is this: you were never broken. You were being broken open. And that's the miracle of it. The very thing that tried to crush you becomes the reason you rise. No, healing is not easy. It's not neat or predictable. It is messy and non-linear. Some days you'll feel free. Others you'll feel like a child again, raw and aching. But even in the mess, there is movement. Even in the tears, there is truth. And here's something you need to know. You were chosen for this. Not to suffer endlessly, but to awaken completely. You were chosen to feel deeply, so that you could heal deeply. You were chosen to witness pain, so that you could become a mirror for others who are still lost inside of it. You were chosen not to carry the old story, but to end it. And as you do, something else is born. Not just a healed version of yourself, but a new ancestor, a breaker of chains, a whisperer of light. Someone who walks into the world no longer haunted by their past, but guided by their purpose. Because every wound does carry a lesson, and you're finally ready to learn. The alchemy of the chosen one. You were not placed in this life to suffer needlessly. You were not born into hardship because you were weak or destined to carry endless pain. You were chosen not because it's easy, but because you are capable. You are not sent into a broken lineage to be broken by it. You are here to become the fire that transforms what was once heavy, silent, and buried. You are here to practice the alchemy of the soul, to take what was meant to defeat you and turn it into your deepest strength. This path is not for everyone. It calls to those who, despite their exhaustion, still choose to grow. Those who feel the wound, but reach into it for wisdom. Those who look at their own scars and wonder, what if this isn't damage? What if this is design? What if everything that hurt you was pointing to everything you were meant to become? Take a breath. Feel that. Now ask yourself this. What if the very things you believed were your weaknesses, the loneliness, the rejection, the silence in childhood that screamed louder than words, were actually the roots of your power? Maybe the rejection didn't break you. It taught you the depth of your self-worth. Maybe the neglect didn't make you fragile. It forced you to build your independence from the inside out. Maybe the absence of love gave you the eyes to see what real love must be. Maybe the pain you carry has quietly grown into compassion, the kind that touches people before you even speak. This is the quiet miracle of chosen ones. We don't wait for perfect conditions. We don't wait for someone else to name our worth. We learn to take what we were given, the raw, the broken, the unfair, and transmute it into gold. This is ancient alchemy, not of metals, but of soul. And the beauty of this transformation is that it never stops with just one person. When you rise, you show others what's possible. When you refuse to carry the weight of the past, you make it lighter for everyone who comes after you. That's the part many don't see. Your healing is not just about you, it's about your entire bloodline. It's about your future children and their children. When you break the chain, the echo ripples through time. When you choose forgiveness, peace, or presence, even for a single day, you shift something that your ancestors may have never been able to touch. And no, we don't call toxic families a gift because the pain they caused was fair or excusable. We call them a gift because pain, when met with awareness and courage, becomes purpose. It sharpens you, it humbles you, and if you let it, it awakens you. So let's reframe the question. If you knew your family's dysfunction was the very soil in which your higher self would take root, would you resent it, or would you learn to grow from it? If every emotional wound was a doorway to growth, if every childhood silence was a lesson in inner strength, if every time you were dismissed or misunderstood was a divine push toward self-knowledge, how would you show up in your life today? You see, you are not a victim of your family. You are the catalyst for its transformation. You are not sent here to repeat the pain. You were sent here to end it. And that, my friend, is sacred work. But don't mistake sacred for easy. The work is messy. It's emotional. It will ask everything of you. There will be days when you feel strong, even invincible, and days when the weight of it all feels like it might pull you under. That's okay. That's part of the process. Healing is not a straight line. Awakening never happens overnight. Still, you keep going, because at some point you realize that you're not just walking away from pain, you're walking into your freedom, and freedom is the truest purpose of all. But freedom doesn't begin when you cut ties. It doesn't begin with a dramatic exit or a final confrontation. Those things may come, but they are surface level. The real liberation begins in the mind and the heart. It begins when you stop reacting to the drama, the dysfunction, the manipulations, and the guilt trips. It begins when you stop letting their pain speak louder than your inner peace. This is where the path truly turns, when their judgments no longer move you, when their love or lack of it no longer controls you, when their chaos no longer defines your identity. That is spiritual liberation, and it starts with one simple but powerful decision. I will no longer live in reaction to them. I will live in alignment with my truth. That choice changes everything. It shifts the energy, it breaks the cycle, it awakens the true self that has been waiting, quietly, beneath the layers of survival. But let's be clear, this isn't about running away. You could move to the other side of the world and still carry their voices inside your head. You could change your name, your job, your city, and still be bound by invisible chains. Because the deepest chains are never outside of you, they're inside. They live in your thoughts, your nervous system, your choices, and breaking them means going inward. That's the real journey, not escape, but embodiment. When you make peace with your past, not by erasing it, but by transforming it, you return to yourself. You step into the fullness of who you really are. And when that happens, your family's story no longer defines you. Your story does. So let me leave you with this truth. You are not here to suffer. You are here to rise. You're not here to carry the weight of your family's wounds. You are here to heal them by healing yourself. And as you do, you don't just change your life, you change the future. That is the true alchemy of the chosen one. Remembering who you were before the wound. There is a moment on the healing journey where the noise quiets, and you're left sitting in front of something deeper, something older than the pain, something beneath all the stories you were told growing up. It's not just about the events that happened to you. It's about the meanings you gave them, the beliefs they planted, the roles you assumed, the truths you swallowed without question. The stories we inherit from toxic families often come dressed as facts. You're too much. You're not enough. Love must be earned. Speaking up is dangerous. These patterns are like invisible threads, weaving themselves into how we think, how we love, and how we show up in the world. And they become the chains that quietly bind us, until one day we wake up and ask, is this really who I am? This is where the work begins. Not the work of fixing yourself, but the sacred act of remembering yourself. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new, it's about shedding everything that isn't truly you. It's about peeling back the armor, the masks, the layers of silence and shame, and finding the original light you were born with. That light is still there. It was never destroyed, only buried. The Sufi tradition tells a parable that mirrors this exact process. A man goes on a long journey to find treasure. He dreams of gold buried under a distant bridge in a faraway land. So he travels, crossing mountains and rivers, enduring hardship and hunger. When he finally reaches the spot in his dream, he finds nothing. But a guard nearby laughs and says, "You came all this way for treasure? Funny, I had a dream too, that in a poor man's house beneath the hearth, a treasure was buried. I would have gone looking, but dreams are dreams." The man recognizes the description. It's his home. He returns, digs under the hearth, and there it is. The treasure had been with him all along. This is the story of your healing. You go searching. You try to earn love. You seek validation. You exhaust yourself trying to fix what others broke in you. But eventually you realize the treasure was never outside of you. It's in your heart, waiting to be reclaimed. But to get there, you need awareness. You need to recognize the beliefs you carry that are not yours, the ones passed down like family heirlooms of pain. You need to see that those ideas about your worth, your voice, your value are not truths. They are wounds pretending to be truths, and wounds can be healed. Still, awareness is only the beginning. Seeing the cage doesn't set you free. You have to find the key, and that key is healing. Healing is not a polished path. It's not a straight line. It doesn't come in perfect stages or clean victories. It's messy. It's cyclical. Some days you feel like you've moved mountains. Other days, one word from a family member can bring it all crashing back. That's normal. That's part of it. To truly heal, you'll need 3 sacred tools: self-love, self-compassion, and self-discipline. Self-love is the foundation. It's choosing yourself again and again, even when no one else does. It's deciding to honor your needs, even when it makes others uncomfortable. It's believing in your worth without needing someone else's permission. And in a toxic family, this is a radical act, because you've likely been taught that love is conditional, that you're lovable if you're quiet, if you're useful, if you're not a burden. But true self-love says, I am worthy because I exist. And yes, that belief might feel foreign at first. That's where self-compassion comes in. Self-compassion is the soft, steady voice inside that says, you're doing your best. It's what holds you when the grief is loud and the progress feels invisible. It's what reminds you that you don't have to earn healing. You just have to allow it. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. These emotions aren't signs of failure. They're part of the unfolding. And then there's the third tool, the one we don't talk about enough: self-discipline. Because healing isn't always soft. Sometimes it's getting out of bed when everything in you wants to give up. Sometimes it's walking away from the drama when you'd rather fight back. Sometimes it's showing up for your journal, your breath work, your prayer, even when no one sees it, even when you're tired. Discipline isn't about control, it's about devotion. Devotion to your healing, devotion to the life that's waiting for you beyond survival. You're not just healing for yourself, you're healing for your future, you're healing for your inner child, you're healing for your lineage. Because when you heal, something ripples outward. When you forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace, you change your future. When you love yourself in the places they could not, you send a message to the universe. This pain stops here. That is powerful. So here's what I want you to remember right now. You are not broken. You are becoming. Every scar you carry holds a lesson. Every time you felt unloved is now a doorway into deeper compassion, for yourself and for others. You're not weak for needing time. You're not behind. You're not late. You're right on time. Let this be the season you stop trying to prove yourself. Let this be the season you go inward, not to fix what's wrong, but to uncover what's right, under the conditioning, beneath the guilt, beyond the roles you played to survive, is you, the real you. And that version of you, the one who dares to remember who they are beyond the pain, they're already free.